Welcome to GRC Uncensored, a new podcast designed to elevate real conversations with GRC professionals, auditors, regulators, and those building programs around it. Your hosts Troy Fine and Kendra Cooley, alongside producer Elliot Volkman, guide unfiltered discussions that dig into the reality of how governance, risk, and compliance function, rather than the rose-colored perspective that's fueled by millions in marketing spend. Now, onto your hosts.
I just took down.
So the issue is you're in the world of cybersecurity. You're supposed to have the dark colors and the fancy little things.
True.
You don't get a window. You get to live in a basement with screens everywhere.
The window is next to me. It just wasn't working having it behind me because I feel like the light from behind with the webcam was just jacked up.
The dark. I feel like the dark background though works well, but maybe I'm wrong. Like
I think so too. Yeah, it was a bit of a risk. I think like painting this room this dark, but I really like it. So I think I want to do the ceiling too. We'll
All right. Well, I'm going to interrupt you because we're live. We're recording, and welcome to GRC Uncensored. I'm Elliot Volkman, your producer, alongside our wonderful hosts, Kendra and Troy, or TJ, depending on how friendly he feels today. Today, we have a wonderful guest, someone that I have chatted with in the past life at organizations that I may or may not have worked at. But we're going to either, depending on when we publish this, either extend an episode that you had just heard, or you can ignore this little spiel and you'll understand that this is going to set context for that episode. Now, I will set a baseline here because Shruti is not up to speed on how we do things right here. She provided a whole document that explains this entire conversation that she wants to have with us. And I apologize in advance. We're throwing that all out the window. We'll maybe get to like 3 of it, but wherever it goes, it goes.
I kind of liked it though, Elliot. I'm not gonna lie.
It was very structured.
Come on.
I like
you want to be structured, Troy? We're not doing that.
Sometimes.
In your real job. We don't do structure here.
That's true.
It's your time
I'm
to
very
let
structured
loose.
in my real job. Yes, I would agree with that.
I'm just kidding.
You're right.
We'll go ahead and attempt to use some of that as the baseline. But Shruti, before we kind of jump into any of that or even explain what the topic of choice is, who are you? What is your background? What are we going to be chatting about?
Absolutely. So I am an engineer who is currently working as a GRC professional. So I started out my career almost 8 years ago after my master's degree in software engineering, and I was clueless. I wasn't sure if that's something I wanted to pursue. And 8 years down the line, I actually work on compliance as my job today. And I work alongside all the compliance professional, all the legal people, and in a different setup. I still deal with, I would say, engineering people time to time, but I mean, it's a different life now, and I don't think anything would be better suited than this. So today, if you ask me who I am a GRC professional. I'm a generalist. I'm also a specialist in some areas, and I love my job.
But the one thing to call out here is you obviously have a pretty technical background, which is
I do.
not necessarily the norm for GRC, correct?
Absolutely, yeah. People ask me why I switched because mostly I have my friends, including my own husband, who has a technical background, who works as a product manager today. So what happens is like when you do have an engineering degree, it's presumed that you're going to go into that kind of technical field. But no, when people ask me and they're actually behind me, I'm very proud of them, but that's not something I do today. I ventured into this and I have no regrets.
Excellent. That is a great setting for what we're going to be talking about, which is, well, we'll position it 1.5 ways. I'll let you all figure out which direction you want to go. Anyways, the potentially shrinking talent gap, or...
Hey, I got to ask my question.
I want to set up the topic,
Oh,
man.
wow. I thought you were jumping into it. Okay.
Yeah.
You mean about structure?
All right. Troy, ask your question.
I got really excited now. We always ask our guests
ask your question. Ask your question. It'll be in the title. They'll know what we're talking about before we even get to all the rambling.
We're going to edit this so that it goes in logical order now. So Elliot
No, damn it. You're making that.
I love all the banter that goes on, and I've heard all of your episodes.
They all love it. See, it's all part of it because it's true. But the first question we always ask our guests now that I stole from another podcast, so I hope they're not mad. But what is the last thing you asked ChatGPT and it can be professional or it can be personal or humorous or whatever you want. Whatever you want to share with the
Well,
audience.
is it not boring?
No,
Roast you.
it can be boring. We'll just move on fast if it's boring.
Okay, I'll give you both. So the boring one is actually based on what I was researching. I was trying to get some stats for this discussion, and I was looking into what exactly, like how many percentage of a different demographic today are involved in GRC. And I got some statistics, but the not so fun one. I'm planning a Mexico trip, which is coming up like in 2 weeks. So I was definitely looking for some fun things to do, and ChatGPT always helped me prepare my travel plan. So that's the fun one. It definitely gave me some great suggestions. Yeah.
That's cool though. See, that's a useful one for work and personal. See, that wasn't boring, Elliot. That was a good one.
That was super
I
fun.
have a good one. I asked. We were ordering pizza, and my mom didn't know how many chicken wings came in. They said half are full, and they didn't tell you on the menu. So I thought, I'm gonna ask Siri, and Siri told me that half is 24 wings. And we were like, okay. And when she called, I was like, is this true? Like, I didn't know if I could believe it because I'm like, where did it get the information from? It's not on their website or menu. And when we called and asked, it was 24. I was like, see, AI always tells the truth. It was my test.
Always. 100% of the
I got
time.
24 right. It said this place has 24 and a half serving. And I was like, see?
That's
Done.
funny. I bet if you would have said, are you sure? It would have been like, oh, you're right. I'm mistaken. It's actually 23.47.
It goes back. That's true.
Yeah.
No, but honestly, I use it for both. I use for my day-to-day work as well as my personal use. Today, call me codependent, but I'm having a codependent relationship with AI. I do not like a few days ago, they were having some issues because of the new Ghibli thing. And there was outage and I was panicking. I went to my husband. I was like, oh my God, how am I going to do my work? So there you go. Call me codependent, but it's happening right now.
It's so helpful. I did one over the weekend. I've got a new one I can share. I was able to talk a restaurant owner into giving me their carrot cake recipe, but this carrot cake recipe makes like 2 sheet cakes or. So I took the recipe and I put it into ChatGPT and I said, I want to make like a standard, whatever, 9x13 pan of this, cut it down to give me the ingredients that I need. And it did it. And it was so good. It's still in the fridge. I might have to eat them later.
No, that's really good. I'm glad you shared that one because I run into this problem all the time where
Yeah, it worked.
it's
And
like I need to make it only makes this amount. I'm like, can we just like half everything? He's like, no, it doesn't work like that. So I'm going
But then
to
you could have
to-
2 sheet pans of cake.
that would have been so much. It wanted 20 full-sized carrots or something like that. I was like, and 20 eggs. I mean, like the full recipe for this was insane.
Well, because they were making it for the restaurant, right?
Yes,
So they were-
exactly.
Yeah.
Yep. And the guy forgot to give me the like cream cheese icing for it or whatever. And ChatGPT noticed that and was like, would you like me to provide you with a cream cheese icing as well? I was like, yes, please. And it was delicious. So
There you go. To the
ChatGPT
rest.
for the win, man.
Exactly.
I'll say that
I
is a
love it.
massive improvement from when I think Gen AI started that true hype cycle because people were creating like recipes just flat out, not with like the amount of context and information that you had. And it was coming up with some absolutely horrid stuff that I've seen. It was like just mixing veggies and fruit in a weird way, turns into like mud colored smoothies. So, yeah, that seems like a better applicable use. So, anyways, maybe we transition to the topic. TJ.
But that
No,
was
just-
that was a fun discussion.
Yeah,
And now
no,
it creates images. So now
totally
we're all
kidding.
just done for.
All right. So the subject at hand is pretty straightforward. So we, in the cybersecurity world, we've basically been throwing all sorts of different stats. And obviously it just relates directly over to GRC in particular. We're not getting to the debate of they're the same thing or overlap and all that. That all said, there is a talent shortage or a skill gap somewhere amongst us, dependent on is that completely accurate, some of the stats that we've seen, whatnot. But that's what we're here to chat about. So, Shruti, you have some pretty strong opinions and perspective on why you feel like there is a gap or shortage. So maybe we just kind of go there. What is your hypothesis or your thesis on this subject?
Absolutely. So I'll start from actual number. The IIA, the Institute of Internal Auditor Organization, they have been publishing articles and their reports. And some of them dates back to 2022, 2021, until the last one in 2024. And it comes back in almost each one of those reports. I have myself attended one of the conferences hosted by ISACA. It's a GRC conference. They do it every year. And one of the topic back in 2023 was the fact that how much important it is now to think about this skill gap, and more of it, the professional gap. That means there is a number of people who are bound to retire in the next decade. And that's going to happen because of the retirement age. But the new generation that was coming in are not that much interested in the topic. They were exploring the options like why exactly this is happening and what can we do to motivate people, the new generations in different, I don't know, it could be because of the background or what exactly, like as I gave myself as an example, can we motivate more engineers to come into GRC profession, or can we motivate having a separate subject like compliance in your school? What could be the ways to make sure that we have more GRC professionals, more compliance? And today I wouldn't call it just compliance, because the way I think it's more governance, risk, and compliance. It's a combined field today. How can we motivate more people to come into this field? Because the future is very set and it's not going to change because how life works in a way. But how exactly can we make sure that the future is a bit different from what the stats are showing today?
Interesting. So let me derail a lot of that a little bit. Do you feel that it requires a full degree to accomplish these, the skills and knowledge that you need to be a proper GRC professional? Or could that be more almost like a trade school thing, or even something that just gets incorporated into a more broad cybersecurity degree?
I would say it can happen any of those ways. I would say it depends on the personnel. So for me, as I said, I had a different degree, but I was interested in the job and I kind of learned everything by doing it. So it came from working in different projects, experiences, and I kind of grew into it. But it could very well be maybe not an actual like a program, but very well be a trade skill that could be learned during your courses, during your school, as well as something of a course itself. I can give Udemy as an example. You go and you learn about it. But I would still very much say you don't need to go through a whole course to learn about it. You need to have that learning appetite and need to have a lot of GRC can be learned as you go. It's more about trying to connect the dots and making sure that how exactly each of them speak to each other and how exactly the whole governance structure looks like. For me, it was very, very much learning and continuously learning, and I still do. Everything is shifting in such a rapid speed. We can never stop. So anybody who is looking into the profession, I think regardless if they have a degree or they have a different background altogether, if they have curiosity and they're willing to continuously learn with the developing landscape, that's your secret recipe.
Yeah, I mean, I've noticed, I don't know if you follow, so the accounting profession is having a very similar issue, but maybe that one's a little bit more obvious. There's way less people that want to go into accounting, right? So they're worried, like, how do we make it more enticing to younger people? And I'm wondering if like that's kind of like GRC is kind of like, not saying GRC is accounting, but like when you think of security roles, GRC is like not a sexy role to think about in security, right? In cyber. So I'm wondering if that's it. Just the younger generation thinks GRC equals boring, equals I don't want to do that. I'll go do something else in cybersecurity. I don't know, but I'm wondering if that's what's driving some of this lack of interest.
I would say that probably has a lot to do with it. From my perspective, like in the last several years of being in the field, I think before I really dove more into the GRC side of building out some of these security programs, I always kind of thought of it as like, oh, you're like the auditor's best friend kind of thing. And it's not sexy. It's not fun, kind of like to Troy's point. And I think one of the bigger issues that we're having right now, especially with the younger generation and getting them interested in this, is the fact that like they probably look at it as, oh, that's a lot of reading. Also, typically, like just speaking from my own experience, the GRC roles in cybersecurity pay a hell of a lot less than like a security engineer. So if I'm going to spend my time learning this craft, I'm going for the moneymaker.
Hey now.
I'm just saying, like, I know for me, if I were starting back at square one for this career and I was faced with, hey, you could go and be a security engineer or even a security analyst, like in a SOC a lot of times, or you can write policies and talk to auditors. No offense, Troy. I'm probably going that other route. Also, I think another thing is GRC almost requires you to be a little bit more personable versus some of these more technical. Yeah, some of the more technical roles where you can hide in your corner a little bit. And I don't know if you've noticed if you talk to somebody under the age of 20 lately, but I'll just stop there.
Yeah, wait, we can't do age discrimination here.
Yeah, I have kids. I can say, talk to someone under the age of 20. It's like, oh my goodness.
I don't talk to many teenagers. I talk to 8-year-olds and 4-year-olds, so I'm not there yet, but
different.
Yeah, so I think I'll just add to Troy's point here. Troy, I just have to give you a shout out before I move ahead with this. I think everything that you do with all of your infographics posted on LinkedIn, all the emojis and all the, everything that you're doing for the profession, I have to give a shout out. Because I think, as you said, there is definitely, like, I've even listened to your podcast, you guys talking, and this has come up multiple times. GRC is not the most, popular or great or most, talked about. And sometimes it gets shadowed by cybersecurity. I have had many conversations retaining to podcasts even where I pitched that, hey, why don't we talk more about GRC topics? And I have been told that it's not, people don't want to listen about somebody talk about policies. I want to put more topics where people are going to talk about, threat intelligence and more cool stuff and tool. I would say this is definitely happening. GRC is not the most, charming field, or people always, there's a perception, I think, mostly. People always connect, hey, GRC or compliance means a whole bunch of document, as Kendra said. I have to read, I have to understand, oh my God, I have to go through all these processes and then deal with auditors. I think there is definitely a rebranding that is required. And especially if we want to get the attention of the newer generation, it depends on, I think if I'm going to just call out the generations, until millennial, we're still okay. But for Gen Zs and the later generation, they need to feel like there is a purpose. There is something that's charming. There's something that is, it's out of the typical ordinary. But there is also the other generations who are structured in a way, the way things are done. In my day-to-day also, I feel like we are kind of in between a generational gap where the more experienced professional want to do things in certain way, but the younger generation are not seeing eye to eye with that. And that's why the interest is dying. I definitely have people reaching out to me to know about the profession, but not a lot of success stories where this, switched their careers because they felt motivated.
Well, it sounds like, in summary, millennials will read and Gen Z will not read. It's kind of,
exactly.
I'm joking, but I noticed that a lot of younger people are just read headlines. So we read a headline. Yeah. Oh, it's true. They don't even read the article. I'm like, if you read the article, it actually said this. The headline was just to grab your attention, right? So I think they don't like to read. And I see my 8-year-old. My 8-year-old actually likes to read, but we'll see. We'll see if that continues.
Thankfully, Google has that new feature where you can turn any doc into a podcast.
What's it called?
Nope.
Maker?
LLM or something.
Have you used it, by the way? Have you used it?
I haven't personally used it.
Okay, so I tried it. And I gave it a screenshot. I know we're going off topic, but this is important. What actually. I don't know if it's important. It's not going to be important, but I'm going to tell you anyways. So I gave it a screenshot just from an image, and I said, okay, here's an AWS password policy. I got it from the internet. It wasn't an actual client, so don't worry. I don't know whose it was. And I said, tell me the password policies, because it can like read PDFs or anything too. And tell me which policies are in place. Because I was trying to think about from an auditor perspective. Like, okay, here's the evidence. Like, tell me what it says. And it actually got it wrong. It said a password box was checked when it wasn't. And I was like, hey, I don't think this box is checked. And it's like, oh, you're right. I missed that. It's actually not checked. And then I was testing it to make sure it just wasn't listening to me. Like, I said, okay, that one's not checked either. It's like, no, you're wrong. That one is checked. So it wasn't just like saying it actually like got it wrong and then we checked it. But then I said, make a podcast, like do that, the audio thing you just said, Kendra, whatever they call it. Wow. I was like, if someone, like, it was amazing. And it was 5 minutes on like 5 password settings. And it just had a 2-person, sounded like us, like better than us. I mean, the voices were like crisp, clear, human-like. I was like, if somebody posted this with just the voices, I would have 100% believed it was humans doing the podcast. Like their tone, their inflection, it was like, sounded like humans talking. And I was like, there's no way I would have known that wasn't.
It's pretty impressive. Yeah, I heard it on a podcast where they were like just messing with it, and it was really, really cool. But anyways, yeah, a little bit off topic. But
I think it kind of goes into like AI. I mean, yes, it's off topic, but like I hear a lot of things on LinkedIn, or I've been seeing a lot where it's like it feels like there's a trend to push that GRC can be done with bots and AI, and we need less humans. And I've been thinking about this, kind of going along with our conversation, like if I'm in college and I'm seeing all this stuff and I'm seeing like, oh, GRC can just be done by bots and it can be done by AI, why am I going to go in? Like, why go into that field? Like, there's not going to need me. I'm going to go do something else. I think I start to think that. Is my job going to go away? Like, I wouldn't like that, but whatever. That's another discussion for another day. But like, if I'm thinking that and worrying about it, why wouldn't a younger person seeing this and trying to figure out what they want to do? GRC doesn't need humans. Like, I feel like that's kind of a message that's slightly being sent subtly, but I feel like there's a trend out there.
Yeah. Well, for me, I almost didn't really realize the importance of GRC until I was probably like 8 or so years into my security career. Like, I started out not super technical, but I think a lot of my like first foray into cybersecurity was more on the administration side. So like IAM, and then graduating into more of a SAC role. And it wasn't really until I started building out programs for organizations that I actually started to understand the importance of GRC. And it's interesting because I think in the past, GRC has almost been the starting point for a lot of people coming into cybersecurity, but maybe it's time to kind of flip that on its head and let people come in through those more technical means of security analysts or security engineers, or, you know, other routes, and then try and help them to understand that GRC is so much of the building blocks of what we're trying to accomplish in security. And maybe sometimes you got to like bang your head against the wall a few times or try and do things the wrong way before you realize, oh, actually, this is rooted in something. This is rooted in a framework. This is rooted in governance. And then go back. So maybe we got to start going after the people who are like 10 to 12 years in their career and pulling them back and say, aren't you tired of programming? Aren't you tired of chasing down those hackers? Maybe it's time to come to the good side.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, like, I agree with this so much. If we have to, like, this is an arena I haven't thought about, but maybe, Kendra, you're absolutely right here. Maybe like this could be another one of those, like, a demographic that we can target. And I've seen this with my own organizations, I would say, because there are definitely people late in their IT or IT security career who understand so much now because they have a different position than just an analyst. They're more into managerial position, and they just don't deal with tech anymore. They deal with the whole governance structure. They face audits. So they understand the importance of GRC itself. So maybe they could be definitely a good demographic to nudge and say, hey, are you looking for a switch in career? And maybe you're interested in GRC because now you understand the depth of it.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of see that being a better approach, only because I think, as you kind of stated before, you didn't start off in GRC.
Exactly.
I didn't start off in GRC. I was doing Sarbanes-Oxley testing for IT audit testing for financial, public companies. I needed financial statement audits and needed IT audits done for Sarbanes-Oxley. And then that's kind of how I morphed into like over years and multiple projects. And I just got interested in it and it kind of fell in my lap. And I feel like if you ask a lot of people that have been doing this for like 10 plus years, they were just the person that raised their hand when someone said, we need to like do this framework or something. Who wants to help us do it? And they raised their hand at the company. And if they liked it, they just kind of stayed with it throughout their career. So I don't know. Yeah. So when people ask me like, what's the best way for an entry level person to get into this? I'm always like, I don't know, because I didn't have to do that. And I don't ever have a good answer. And it kind of goes back to Elliot's point about like, is there entry level roles for GRC? And I don't want to say there isn't, but I just never know a good path in sometimes.
Which is so interesting, because oftentimes that's what you hear is like, that's the path. If you want to get into cybersecurity, you better learn your policies and you better learn your frameworks. I don't think that's fair. I think that really discounts the people who have spent a lot of time becoming professionals in the GRC space and just basically saying like, oh, well, that's like entry level cybersecurity. I don't think that's fair at all. It requires a very particular set of skills. Okay, so I'm going to say this, and now it may or may not make sense depending on how we release the episodes, but to Pete's point, like when we were talking about the recruiting aspect of GRC, he talked to us about how like, the larger like big four companies would kind of use this as an entry route for people into the field. And he spoke a little bit about like kind of the soft skills or the personality traits, I guess, that those organizations would go after to like bring people in and kind of train them up. So I'm curious, like from your perspective, what do you think like maybe the personality traits are of somebody who would make a good GRC person?
That's a very good question. I would say, like, I touched on this a little bit before. I would go back to that and I will say you have to like, I don't think you need a lot of trade skills. I think, as you guys are saying, a lot of us learned on the job as we go into it. What we all had was the curiosity and the eagerness to learn. And of course, Kendra, you mentioned this people person. Being a people person is important because, as we all know, the job requires you to talk to people, to understand people, to follow up. Like, there is no other way around. You have to be okay with dealing with people. You have to know who you are dealing with. You have to understand them, and you have to kind of hold your ground in different situations. So if I can narrow it down, I would see a person needs to be very, very inquisitive. They need to know, like they need to have this urge to, ask questions, learn, inquire more how things are, as well as a people person. And of course, like part of the job is also being an auditor, as well as learning about the changing landscape. So eagerness and willingness to learn, that would be my third point. If you have these kinds of soft skills, I think there's a lot of the job that you can just learn on the go as you deal with different projects, as you deal with different situations, and you can learn as you go.
Yeah. Now, what in your opinion are some of the things that you've maybe learned throughout your GRC career that you maybe look back on and you say, if I had some more like formal training here, this might have been a little bit easier. I might have hit a few less bumps in the road. Is there anything that sticks out to you in that regard?
I would say it has a lot to do with the auditing part of things. So I didn't have a lot of coaching or mentoring when it comes to I have done both internal audit as well as representing corporations into external audit. Like any other newbie, I have spoken a lot, I've shared a lot, I've done a lot. And then with every one of those audits, I've learned to kind of put myself in check and make sure how to kind of deal with different people and different auditors. It's the golden rule: do not overshare, do not overgive, kind of go as they ask you the question. So that's something that I would have preferred to learn before I even enter the field. As well as, like, I honestly wouldn't say there are too many of the skills that I would say I had a lot of loss because I didn't know. I took a step back whenever something happened. I kind of learned from it and went ahead and kind of never repeated that. So this continuous learning cycle, as it said in GRC, it also kind of happens with you as a person. Make sure you kind of focus on that too, that you learn and you kind of never repeat that.
So being an engineer, what about having like technical skills in GRC? I think there's always a debate out there. Do you need to be technical? And technical is such a vague buzzword. Like, what does that mean? When I say technical in this question, I'm referring to from like being a GRC engineer. It's kind of like a term that's being thrown around. And I guess you were an engineer, so I would call you a GRC engineer. But like understanding Python and writing code and using code to test controls and APIs. Like, do you think that is a skill that every GRC person is going to need to understand in the next 2 years in order to be successful at the role? Or is that just something only certain people in the GRC realm will need to know, but not everybody's going to need to understand how to make a Python script to go gather data from AWS or something like that?
That's actually a brilliant question, and I'm very happy that you asked it because I have different opinions about this. I would say before, if you look into the last decade, a person without such technical skill would have been okay with the GRC as a GRC professional. But if I look into the landscape of the next decade or the coming decades with AI, I very, very much think that having a little bit or some technical knowledge per se is a good leverage to have. I have seen this among having discussions with other GRC professionals. A lot of them are today shying away from educating themselves or using a lot of AI into their day-to-day because they don't understand the full extent of it. So they are shying away from using in their day-to-day, and I'm taking AI as an example. For me, I would say I am a different case, and my technical knowledge, my background tremendously helped me doing the talk, making the decisions. When in my job, I deal with the engineers a lot, especially talking about, audits or prepping them or talking to them or just understanding their processes. And because I have that technical knowledge, it gives me an edge and it makes it easy for me to trying to find out if something they're just making it up or it actually works in your day-to-day, as well as using a tool. I'm never shying away from using a tool. So my background, I have used tools. I know how they're made. I've done all these exploration. So it's already giving me another edge to kind of, look into a new tool, being eager about it and figuring it out in a more quicker sense. So I would say an AI, coming back to, again, wrapping up that, AI, I never shied away. It is, as I said, it's a codependent relationship now, but I'm not just using the surface of it. I'm trying to understand the inside out. It's not a black box for me. It's a gray box for me because I'm spending my time trying to figure out and my technical knowledge is giving me that edge. So I would say even if the last decade was okay without a technical knowledge as a GRC professional, I would highly encourage, and that does not mean you have to go back and do an engineering degree. I'm no way saying that. I'm saying getting some courses or getting some basic learning in terms of how an AI works, how an LLM works, is going to help you boost your efficiency as a GRC professional.
Do you think you would have been as effective in your role talking with the engineers if you didn't have that technical background? Like, could you have done it effectively, I guess, for lack of a better way to ask it?
Not as effectively as I do today. I'm able to identify a lot of the things that is not happening and that is being said that it happens in different situation, or sometimes if a customer is making some claims that they need something from us, I'm able to identify it because I know how it works. I know how a software development lifecycle works from end to end. I've seen it, I've done it. So it's way easier for me. Yes, I definitely would have been able to do my job, but not as effectively as I am doing it today.
Yeah, might have taken a few more steps to kind of get to the end goal. Yeah, because engineers do like to try and pull the wool over your eyes if they can smell out that you don't know what you're talking about. That's for sure.
Well, I think that kind of ties, a lot of the, I guess, negativity, right? Why are CPAs doing security audits?
Yeah.
Like, CPAs have engineering background to be able to talk to engineers about their SDLC process and understand the risks. I think I do, but I've never, if you want the honest truth, I've never built anything or coded, anything in my life. But I like to think as an auditor, I've been able to figure that out. But maybe that's because been doing this for so long. See, I think I've been doing audits, so I've kind of been able to like learn by asking a lot of questions and auditing a lot of different engineering teams. They didn't have another alternative. They had to use me. It's different now, right? I guess it's way different now. But like, if I was like coming into this as going to work for a firm to do SOC 2 audits or ISO audits or PCI, whatever the case may be, and I was coming out of school and I'm going to talk to like engineering teams at these huge companies, like that would be very intimidating to me. Yeah. If I was like, how would I be able to do that effectively? I don't think I would be, but I think I'm now able to do it just because have experience in talking with teams, so I know the right questions to ask and what to look for. But that'd be very scary to me if I was coming into that role now, I feel like.
But do you know why you've gained that experience, Troy?
Because I make good memes.
Because you haven't had the luxury of logging into a platform and seeing a bunch of green check marks and taking
you know what? That is a good point. You bring up a good point.
Yeah. So my question to you, Shruti, is, obviously we started this conversation talking about the skills gap and the fact that a lot of people are going to be retiring over the next 10 years, including my friend TJ, because,
10? Oh, if I retire in 10 years, my life is good.
I know. I would also like to retire like in the next 5. No, I'm just kidding. But, knowing that there's a lot of people who are going to be phasing out of cybersecurity. We're not getting a lot of people who are super interested in joining GRC like right out of school because, frankly, there aren't a lot of programs. So maybe unless your parents are in GRC and they're like, "Oh, that's super cool," like maybe they'll be able to influence you into the role. But do you think that the growing skills gap or lack of people who are coming into the GRC space, do you think that problem is going to be solved by those automation platforms that are just doing everything for us and making life so grand with our checkboxes? And so then we don't need people who can dig in and ask those more technical questions because we can take this tool for face value. It's 100% right 100% of the time. And I'm killing Elliot right now.
I'm dying. That is such a setup.
Nope, not a setup.
So I'm going to coach you guys on this question. So I listened to your episode of ISO 42001, and I enjoyed the conversation where there was a discussion about how these platforms are being used today and how automation is kind of becoming these platforms are being sold as like, this is your one-stop shop. Hey, use it and everything would be done. But Troy, you also said this, that
oh boy,
the quality of those audits, the quality of those platforms, they are definitely they're not definitely doing it justice. So anyway, I'll try to keep it to a very concise way. Kendra, to your question, I think if you ask me, I don't think automation is going to be able to replace GRC professional. I myself today use multiple automation tool to enhance my experience. Yes, of course. So also another fact is we are definitely looking at a skill gap. That implies we're looking at a personnel gap. Also the fact that most corporations do not have a huge GRC teams. We are already looking at smaller number of teams. So AI can be your saving grace in these kinds of situations. By that, I mean AI can help you increase your efficiency. These tools are great. These automations are great to help you do certain jobs, but they're never going to be able to replace the whole thing. We can claim through those tools that, hey, this is great, this is going to replace everything, but we all know as GRC professional, the quality that's being provided, it's not what is expected. And over longer term, it's just very visible. So my point here is there is no other way to other than actually motivating professionals or motivating students to come to this profession. There is no way to replace the entire workforce through automated platform. And just to give you a simple, like every time somebody asks me this question, like, hey, do you think GRC is going to be replaced by AI? The biggest question that comes to my mind is like, how are you going to replace the audit part? An audit is literally you looking through everything as like it's a very human thing, I would say. It's like I have auditors still requesting me to come sit with me in person. We try to deny and say, hey, we want to do remote audit, but there are tons of auditors who prefer to have that human sense. They want to read you. They want to understand you. You can show them a bunch of documents, but that's not ending your job. The quality that they're trying to get at the end of the day has more to do with understanding how you function. What do you have? Or the fact that you're not just making some documents and checking a checkbox. So if we want to have that quality within this profession, and which I think is going to be very, very essential because AI gives us risk, gives us trust issues and all of that. So the quality needs to be there. I do not think that having just an automation tool is going to get to help that box, like that quality. Yes, of course, the box will be checked, but you would never get that quality.
I think that was a beautiful answer that also ties us back to the thing that we always talk about in every episode, which is some people don't want quality. Some people don't ultimately care. You know, it is a checkbox process or procedure for them. And so, yes, I am 100% on board with everything that you said. I think that there always needs to be like that human element. But at the end of the day, if these automation platforms continue to make it just that much easier to check that box than to have these lesser quality audit firms come in, and I'm trying to be PC, TJ, and are allowing these other audit firms to come in and say, yep, you're good. Well, over time, aren't we like creating more of a systemic problem? Because eventually people like TJ are not going to be in this profession anymore. He does have to retire at some point. And if we've now trained this whole other generation to rely on.
But anyways, just go
I'm
on.
not trying to call you old. I'm just saying eventually you are going to have to move on. But, you know, at the end of the day, like if we're putting more reliance on AI, which can be tricky, especially given the R and GRC, which is risk and AI and everything that's associated. But we're kind of like training this new generation to be so trusting of automation, of what a tool is telling you, of what AI is spitting out. And then over time, like quality is going to continue to go down because people who actually care are going to be moving on. And it's like, are we just creating this incredible problem?
No, I had thought about this a lot. If I had started doing auditing at a firm that was working with all the platforms, and like that is how I learned how to audit, like what would be my perception of auditing right now? Like I'd be very reliant on the tools, and how would I learned the most by sitting down and having conversations like this and talking, not using a tool that told me this control was in place. Like I had to like really like audit. I don't want to say it like that. I had to really like, in order to do it, I had to like get in the trenches and get in there and talk with the client, right? And that's how I learned a lot, you know, trial by error.
Yeah.
And
I think what
like, you don't know that if you don't know what you don't know. So if you're a new person coming into the field, and that's kind of what everybody's doing, it's like you don't even know that you're not
taking it at face value.
Yeah,
right?
it is a little scary.
You're losing. I think that my biggest issue with like where we're headed in terms of automation and AI and all that kind of stuff, which this is slightly off topic, but like we are losing our ability to be critical thinkers. We're losing our ability to look at the data that's in front of us and say, actually, that doesn't make sense. And honestly, that's like where a lot of my distrust And some of these automation platforms come from is because I was smart enough to look at the data that it was presenting me and say, this doesn't check out. I know this is not factual. But had I not had the experience or the technical knowledge to say, I know that that's wrong, I would have just taken it as at face value, potentially worked with an auditor who was going to take this information and be like, yep, that looks great to me. I'm not going to dig in any further. We would have gotten a rubber stamped audit report, then on our way. Then what? Breach happens, we're found negligent. Hey, you didn't actually do this thing. Who is liable at that point?
Uh-huh. I'll add
That's
to
when I
that.
leave the room. I leave the room slowly.
The way I think of it, it's twofold. I'll say one thing. So I was speaking with someone, a lawyer specifically, and she mentioned something that's stuck in my brain. She's like, today I use automation or I use AI as intern. And whatever it produces, I always fact check it or review it or make sure, like, if you give a task to an intern, that doesn't mean that you're never going to look at it and just going to share with your customer. That never happens. So the way I look at it is like for GRC workforce or for any workforce, the way we are treating these automation platform or AI platform, it's very crucial. They're there to help you, to elevate your experience, to make the job easy by taking care of it as if an intern would have done. If you would have given this task for an intern to do, would you have just shared the finding to a customer directly? You would always review it. You would always look through it. You would always make correction, adjustment, and then only when you're comfortable, you would have done that. So that's still my argument. You can use these platforms, and for any professional, new or old, these platforms are going to stay and they're going to elevate your experience. But the output that's coming out of it, it's like an intern. Yes, it's even going to get better. Don't get me wrong. I have all hope. But still, it's your job to make sure whatever it's coming out of it, you're assessing the quality. And the other part I would say, as professionals and at a different generation professional, it's also very important how we are passing on the knowledge to the other generations. By that, I mean my father or grandfather learned how to do math by counting on their fingers. We today, like when I grew up and when I learned how to do math, it was mostly through different Excel sheets or whatnot. If I asked something to my father, he would just do it without even thinking, like it's that much easy. So logical thinking is very important. And in a way, I think it also rests in us as current GRC professional to pass on this knowledge to the next version, the next generation, saying, hey, I love the fact that there are these tools, there are these automation platforms and AI to help you out to do your job, but you should always learn how to do it if someday it's not there. You should have the bare minimum skill to fact check, to do these things without the dependency. So if I am teaching a new person who is into the field, I would always start by explaining them how they can do it manually and then kind of push them into the automation direction. That way they know how to do the count, the math with their fingers as well as through Excel sheet.
Yeah, that makes total sense for so many things in life. I mean, my husband and I have friends who have a daughter who's type 1 diabetic, and before they could do like the pump, like the insulin pump for their daughter, they made them go through a year of being able to calculate and assess like her needs so that they weren't rely upon like that insulin pump. And I think that that's really a similar kind of like, obviously a little bit more tangible example there, but it is really important because I mean, internet goes down all the time. Like we got to be able to do these things on our own, right? You never know what the future is going to hold. And so having that, like that root in the why, or like if you're training someone new about, hey, like, yeah, this checkbox in this automation tool, this is great. This is what it's showing us. But do you know what the root is here? Like what controls is tied to? What are we actually looking at? That's awesome that you see this green check mark, but what's the risk? Like what are you actually trying to solve with this control? Because another thing that will happen, and this has happened to me many, many times in my career, is somebody in the company will come to me and say, hey, we actually need to change our background check policy. Like now we don't want to do employment verification. Okay, well, if we make this adjustment, here's the downstream impact of all of the things that could potentially fail by making that adjustment. An automation platform is not going to tell me that. I have to know the root of where these things are coming from. Yeah. So I love everything that you said, Shruti. I think you bring a really great perspective. I love your technical background and how you've transitioned. I think it's super wonderful. But Troy, Elliot, I don't know if you have anything else to
I know we're at the hour. No, I just have a real quick example. Just happened yesterday. My son loves baseball, and he gets hitting lessons because I think he's going to be in the major leagues. So, right, I got to get him hitting lessons. But anyways, the guy's like his hitting coach, knows his stuff, right? And he's like, Noah, the best bat I've seen is this. So what do you think my son now is going to do because he trusts this person? We got to go get that bat. We got to go get that bat. He doesn't even want to ask questions, understand why it's a good bat. Is it the right bat for me? He just wants to go get the bat. I'm like, and then, he gets upset when I'm like, we can't just go get this bat. We have to research and figure it out. And it's like, he doesn't even want to do that, right? I mean, he's only 8. But if he continues doing that, and that's how the world is, the younger generation doesn't want to research. They just want the answer.
Influencer culture, man.
Yeah.
What'd you say?
That's true.
Influencer culture. That's,
I mean, he wasn't even trying to do it. The hitting coach didn't doing it on purpose. He's just, in his opinion, that has been a really good bat he's seen, which all of us would have had a normal conversation like that and been like, okay, yeah, I'm going to go look into it, right?
Yeah, I'd be like, I think maybe the problem with the hitting is me, not the bat.
I know, but that's what I try to tell him. The bat won't make you hit good. It might, if you still got to be able to hit really good and swing well and do it. But if you connect, it'll go probably further. I'm not even sure we're there yet, though. We just need a bat.
We got to get the timing down, bud.
Yes,
the swing, the stance.
Exactly.
Let's start with the basics.
Exactly. And we're not even doing that with GRC. We're just jumping right as you guys are saying, hey, go here. Here's the results. Go test it. Goodbye. Right?
Yeah.
So, anyways, another tangent for me at the end there, Elliot. But this was a great conversation. So thank you for joining.
Yes.
I loved it.
TJ.
Absolutely.
Oh, sorry. Shruti, go ahead.
No, I was going to say the pleasure was all mine. I enjoyed. You guys gave me certain new perspective to think about it, especially about maybe figuring out a different group of people who might be a better fit for these kinds of roles. Yeah.
Yeah, let's go target the people that are sick of the technical stuff now. And maybe they need a break, a mental break.
Or they just want to know how many wings come in a half fin, whatever they call it.
Honestly, that really shocks me to hear that a half is 24. That seems like a lot.
It's a lot.
I was thinking 6.
No, this is family ordering.
Oh, okay.
So half for a if you're in for a party, it's half container, 24. Full is 48. In case you're wondering, I think that's just the standard. So there you go.
Okay. It also just sounds so expensive because chicken is outrageous, but that's a whole other thing.
I think everything's expensive. Maybe eggs are going down. I don't know. I haven't been following, but anyways.
No.
Oh, we were supposed to bring on the rooster.
Is the rooster still in the room, Elliot?
No, he is currently sitting outside, probably in a fight.
Episode. Okay, we totally forgot that.
Right.
I will tell you, I did buy him the overalls, so hopefully he'll be in for the next episode. He does not like to wear it, so it's going to repair.
Next episode, you're definitely showcasing this rooster.
It lasts for 10 seconds. He just rolls around in a little tornado.
Oh my God. That's so cute. We're going to need a video. All right, cool. Take us home, Elliot.
One final gift for you, only because y'all had brought up the AI conversations. I don't know if it's going to pick up, but we're going to try it, and I'll just edit it in.
Hi, my name is Troy Fine, and I know that SOC 2 reports are actually certifications.
And I'm Kendra Cooley, and I think SOC 2 just belongs in my trash can.
Oh, please. I don't know where I am right now.
All right. That takes us to the end of the episode. Thank you all for joining. See you next time.
That was amazing.
Thank you for listening to GRC Uncensored, the podcast, where Troy and Kendra know their shit, and our producer just talks shit. To learn more about GRC, go to grcuncensored.com, subscribe to our newsletter, or join our community on Reddit. Viewpoints expressed during the show do not reflect the brands, employers, or companies of our hosts, guests, or sponsors.